Hey everybody, Rob the Mellow Guy here, back at you with another video for the channel. This one, I'm going to be doing something a little different. So if you're familiar with the channel, you usually hear me talking a lot about music. I have brought up movies, brought up other different topics I like, but majority of the channel I've dedicated to my love of rock, metal music. I have interviews from my old college radio show. Still do interviews once in a while if you want to check them out. But heavily geared towards, I'd say, rock, metal, post-punk, punk music. Talk a lot about that. But I've always liked films, and that's why with this video, I thought I'd do something a little bit different, change it up. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. And if this caught your attention because of the title, I'm talking about movies. I'm interested to really dive into this topic because I've talked about movies a lot on the channel with my friend Yuvraj when he's been on, and also when we did a podcast. And for years, I've liked different types of films: horror, sci-fi, classic films, comedy, all over the map. So I have a very eclectic taste in movies, and I thought that maybe I should do a video where I give some recommendations, and that's what I'm going to be doing here. And I'm going to call this kind of underrated films that I feel maybe don't get a lot of attention, or critics for some reason back in the day kind of gave some negative reviews. So I'm calling this the underrated films that I enjoy that I would highly recommend people check out. So let's begin. Actually, the first two films star one of my favorite actors. So I'm going to begin with Blind Fury, starring Rutger Hauer. For those who are familiar, I'm sure, of Rutger Hauer's work, the most notable being Blade Runner, where his role is truly iconic, and I feel sometimes everyone just focuses on Blade Runner. But Rutger Hauer has had such an amazing career. My favorite film of his being The Hitcher, and just countless roles. He was in Sin City. Just the list can go on and on of films that he's been a part of. But one film that I've always enjoyed, and yes, it is a bit cheesy, came out and was at late 89, early was it 1990. So special effects, the way it looks to some people might be, oh, this is a cheesy action film. But in my opinion, Blind Fury is an unbelievably entertaining film. Rutger Hauer plays a blind Vietnam vet who, when he was in Vietnam, he lost his sight, but a village rescued him, and as he was getting nursed back to health, he strengthened his other skills and actually became a master swordsman. So when he comes back to the U.S., he wants to reconnect with one of his old army, friends who fought in Vietnam with him. Trying to find his friend, though, turns into his friend who lived in Florida is now in Reno, and these bad guys that the friend is working with, they want to kidnap the friend's son to use as leverage because the friend from the army is making drugs for them. So Rutger Hauer, in a way, protects, watches over the kid, goes to Reno to reunite the child with his father, and along the way he's fighting a lot of bad guys. Over-the-top action scenes. Rutger Hauer also, with the whole him being blind, there's a lot of funny jokes thrown in. The kid and him have some interesting chemistry where the kid at first is kind of mean to him, but throughout the film, the kid learns to respect Rutger Hauer as he sees him as a protector. And let's just be honest, Rutger Hauer's a badass, and seeing him kicking people, around, using the sword, chopping them up, is pretty cool. And I highly recommend it. I feel that, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people, when they saw this film, they thought it's silly, it's cheesy. But Rutger Hauer's acting, to me, pulls you through the film, and you actually find him to be a very likable character. Like the little boy, right? You come around because here's this guy who he may be blind, but he's able to use his other senses to pretty much protect and withstand a lot of crazy stuff. And my grandfather lives in Reno, so I kind of like the fact that you get to see Reno during that time period, and you can compare it to now, which personally the city of Reno is a toilet in my opinion. So when I look at it, it's kind of nice to see Reno when it was somewhat clean and not as seedy. I mean, there's gambling. Most places that have gambling are going to be seedy no matter what. But anyway, Blind Fury, highly recommended. And then right after Blind Fury, another Rutger Hauer film that I feel does not get a lot of respect and for some reason was kind of overlooked, came out around 1992, was Split Second. The reason I am a huge fan of Split Second is if you are into sci-fi, horror, crime, this film kind of combines it all. Rutger Hauer plays a police detective who is obsessed with trying to catch this serial killer. And eventually you find out the killer is nothing that is human, almost like a demonic monster type creature. Very interesting special effects. The film is shot and it has a very dark feel to it. I feel the director was kind of going for a dark, futuristic sci-fi thriller. Rutger Hauer portraying the cop that has, this obsession, sort of burnt out, right? Everyone else on the force kind of treats him as he's like, oh, this crazy guy that's going after this invisible killer that we can never seem to catch. But you find the film to be rather enjoyable as it goes through the different, scenes. And the cop that he works with, who kind of at first is a kind of nerdy guy that Rutger Hauer dismisses, but learns to respect as they're going through the investigation. Also, got to give a shout out to Kim Cattrall. She's in the film. I mean, honestly, a lot of people give Kim Cattrall a lot of crap for some of her films. I personally like her in Big Trouble in Little China. So in Split Second, I didn't think her performance was as bad as I've read people describe it. I thought she did a good job being Rutger Hauer's love interest. And their connection and chemistry was funny at times, the way they kind of, communicated and razzed each other. So, highly recommended if you are into sci-fi horror. Also has the kind of twist of, the future of Earth. There's a lot of really good actors in it. Actually, I think Pete Postlethwaite is in it, as well as some other English actors that I've seen in other films over the years. So, Split Second, Blind Fury. Two very good Rutger Hauer films that, they're action films, horror, sci-fi. They're not taken seriously in a sense, but I feel that Rutger Hauer's talent as an actor and his charisma, there's just something about him that I've always enjoyed. One of my favorite actors. Of course, Blade Runner, but as I said, The Hitcher for me personally is a film I have liked for many years. But Split Second, Blind Fury, check them out if you haven't. I would recommend them, even though, like I said, back then, didn't get a lot of attention in my opinion. And even still, I feel people kind of dismiss them at times. All right, next film, let's go back a little further in history. An older film, I'm talking about the film While the City Sleeps, a noir crime thriller starring Dana Andrews, Vincent Price, George Sanders, Ida Lupino. Just a ton of great characters are in this film. Actors, actresses. Actually, Drew Barrymore, her father is in it, John Barrymore. Her father, not her grandfather, who was also tied to Hollywood. But he's in the film. I have to say, when I first saw this film on TCM, I was thinking, okay, I like crime thrillers. I do like the TCM noir films, kind of that feel, right? There's a killer on the loose. People are doing an investigation. But what's interesting about this film is a media company, the head of the company dies, and his son, portrayed by Vincent Price, takes over. And he's not well respected by the other people in the company, right? Because they are invested in this media company. They work news. And to have the child of the owner who's really not familiar, and again, it's that nepotism factor coming into it, there's a little hostility. And then Vincent Price takes it a step further by saying, I'm going to give a promotion to whoever finds out who the serial killer going around known as the lipstick killer is. Whoever gets the lead and breaks it, I'm going to give that person a promotion. So you have this competition within the media company with these different characters who want to get ahead. And that kind of adds to the whole, we have a killer on the loose, but you also have these people vying to get that position, right? They're doing whatever they can to get information and leads. And Dana Andrews, tremendous actor. I've seen him in a lot of good films. While the City Sleeps, though, in my opinion, is probably the best of his work. I do like Laura. That is also a really good film with Dana Andrews. And Vincent Price, mind you. And in a sense, Vincent Price films I've watched since I was a little kid. Huge fan of his work. I was watching, if you can believe it, like The House of Wax when I was in elementary school. I love that film. The Pit and the Pendulum, The Haunted Palace. So for me, when I saw Vincent Price in While the City Sleeps, I was a bit surprised because here it is. This isn't a horror film, and Vincent Price's character was a bit unique, right? He had this sort of air to him where he's a bit oblivious, or he's kind of, been sheltered, spoiled, takes over this company, the way people kind of feel about him. It was a different type of character, and I thought he did a tremendous job. So, highly recommend While the City Sleeps, directed by the great Fritz Lang, tremendous director who's done a lot. Highly recommend checking out a lot of his other works too if you go on the internet. He's tied to so many classic films. And I think of all the great directors from that time, Fritz Lang is definitely up there. So check it out, While the City Sleeps. All right, now we're going to be jumping. We're going to talk a little horror. But when I talk about horror films, I'm going to be talking about the world of Clive Barker. Now, for those who are familiar, yes, Clive Barker, most known, or those not familiar, how I'll phrase it that way, Clive Barker is really well known for Hellraiser and Candyman. He's a great author, talented director, a visionary in the world of horror. Just a true master. He's up there, I feel, with a lot of the other horror writers, directors, and in terms of people who take these ideas, nightmarish, themes, and bring them to life. But the movie that I feel is highly underrated of his is Nightbreed. And I got to give a shout out to my cousin's old boyfriend, who I'm still friends with on Facebook, Ryan. Ryan, when I was a kid, would always talk about horror. That's why I got along so well with him as a kid. He was this guy that would be talking about horror movies, sci-fi films that, as a kid, he would tell me about and I'd check him out. And he was a big fan of Nightbreed and Clive Barker's books and the movies. So I heard about it at an early age. It wasn't years later till I finally watched the film, and I just couldn't believe, wow. But see, Hellraiser gets so much attention. Same with Candyman. So I feel that sometimes Nightbreed is forgotten, yet it is a really good, enjoyable film that if you are a fan of Clive Barker's horror works, you should watch this film if you haven't. I have to say, the story follows a character named Boone who has these dreams about monsters in this place called Midian. Now, Boone's seeing a doctor as he's been struggling through certain things. And the doctor, you find out, is actually a serial killer. And he tries to pin his crimes on Boone. And so Boone decides, okay, what the hell's going on? I'm having these dreams, and now my doctor's trying to convince me that I'm a serial killer. So he starts to think, well, maybe this place is real. And he actually finds Midian, where the monsters live. Boone, though, is then killed. Actually, before that, he's bitten by a creature, a monster from Midian, which then starts to cause him to turn when he dies. He actually doesn't die after the police come and shoot him up. The doctor, of course, lying, saying he had a gun. And Boone joins Midian. You find out later through the film certain things are happening and there's a prophecy. This is all actually based on a book that Clive Barker had written called Cabal. And I don't want to give too much away, but the film, kind of the climax, is where the doctor, played by the great David Cronenberg, which I find is amazing, that David Cronenberg, this famous director, he actually has an acting role in the film, and he does a really good job as Decker, the doctor, who is just downright evil, creepy even too, the way he just is so calm. And he's, again, portraying this eloquent doctor, but he's a serial killer that kills families. And it's just insane. And also, I have to point out too, the special effects makeup. If you like that type of realistic looking monster makeup special effects, you will love Nightbreed. I can see where this film might have influenced Guillermo del Toro and Hellboy, let's see, Hellboy, and then Hellboy 2, and a lot of the other films that he's done, where the monsters have this sort of grotesque beauty to them. And that's where, when you see the monsters in Midian, you're just taken back. And I also wonder, too, that Clive Barker being a homosexual, the whole point of Midian being this place where the monsters are, because they're trying to escape persecution from the outside world. And as I was sidetracked, I was going to say the climax of the film, where Decker and the police come to get rid of the monsters, and the townsfolk as well with their guns and trucks. It kind of is symbolic and also ties into maybe, again, feeling as an outcast. And like I say, Clive Barker being homosexual and that kind of feeling. And all myself as a metalhead, you feel it as well. Like anybody can relate to that, right? Where you want a place to belong, right? The monsters coming together and they're like a small cult, close-knit community. And then you have the outside persecution trying to take it away. I feel like the film can be very relatable to people, and that's why it to me is such a tremendous film and deserves so much more credit than what I feel like it's given sometimes. And I have to give credit to Danny Elfman, who does the soundtrack. There are times I'm watching the film, I go, why do I feel like I'm hearing The Simpsons? Oh, that's right, Danny Elfman's doing the music. Have to give credit because you know what? The music fits the scenes well and it almost starts to become stuck in your head. So there you go. All around, Nightbreed by Clive Barker, tremendous film, deserves so much more credit. Hellraiser is a classic, Candyman's a classic, but I definitely feel that Nightbreed is just one of those overlooked films sometimes because his other works are just so well respected, given a lot of attention. But as I said, I do feel this film was very influential in terms of the makeup, special effects, and gotta give a shout out to Doug Bradley, is the guy who plays Pinhead. He is also in the film, so that's kind of cool. He actually plays one of the monsters, kind of like the wise monster kind of in the film, or you could say he's kind of like not the leader, but the guy that people turn to when it comes to the rules and stuff of Midian. So that was really cool to see him, because I'm a huge fan of Hellraiser as well, and to find out that he also was involved in this Clive Barker film just stood out. Last film I'm going to recommend, underrated films, but this is going to be called, if you are under a certain age, if you are a type of person that doesn't like extreme, exploitive, outrageous films, you might want to skip this one. But if you're open-minded, you love wacky, insane movies, well then, I'm going to have to highly recommend John Waters' film, Multiple Maniacs. In my opinion, one of the great John Waters films of all time. And that's saying something because I'm a huge fan of a lot of his works. Serial Mom, love it. Pink Flamingos, hilarious, outrageous film. And of course, always working with John Waters was the legendary Divine. Such an amazing person, outrageous, unique, trailblazing individual. I've always said, you look at the drag queens, you look at all the people that now we see, all this stuff, forget it. None of them hold a candle to what Divine was doing. Divine was the queen of trash, violence, and chaos. And that's probably why I kind of enjoy the films, because it's just so wacky, outlandish, pushing the envelope. Again, I'm a fan of extreme metal music, so I respect art that goes beyond and makes you just shocked, right? Shock value stuff. I do enjoy it. And John Waters with Multiple Maniacs, made in 1970, he was going in, all in with this film for sure. One of his early works that I think really caught on and allowed his career to continue. And over time, his films become a little more polished in terms of the scripting, the way the stories are told. Eventually you get Hairspray, a very iconic film, right? One of his probably most popular films. But with Multiple Maniacs, the story is just unbelievable. It follows Divine, who in the beginning, you're treated at this like bizarre, perverted carnival that shows lesbian, gays, freaks, and weirdos, druggies, and these normal people, right, are paying admission to see this shocking stuff, and they're appalled. And then Divine comes and she robs them with her little band of degenerates and kills the people. And the just over-the-top scenes are hilarious. But you also have Divine's partner slash lover is going to double cross her because he's found this new girl that he loves, and it's just insanity all over the map. And there's a scene where Divine is led by a child that I believe is supposed to be like a patron saint or something. It's hilarious. The child is leading this giant drag queen through the streets to a church in which Divine, while in the church, meets up. Let's say there is a person in church, played by Mink Stole. She comes up and uses rosary beads to put in a place that's very private, let's just say, Divine's rear end. While this is going on, of course, Divine is reciting or talking over a reenactment of the Stations of the Cross. So here we have Jesus being crucified, we see that, and then we see Divine being sexually assaulted with rosary beads by Mink Stole and finding pleasure in it. I didn't blink once during this scene. I was just in total shock. I couldn't believe what I was watching, but it's just John Waters does that. His scenes are sometimes just so visually, and the way the characters are reacting, you just can't turn away. I mean, it's outrageous, but that's his type of art. And I have to say, I respect him so much. He's a guy that is just very talented, very hilarious. And again, you know he's trying to get a rise out of people. And that's what Divine was doing. The ending of the film, too, there's some other crazy stuff that happens. I don't want to spoil it if you're going to watch this. But the ending scene where Divine is running around like a maniac, and the townspeople finally just have had enough, and there's this mob, right? You got women and children and men just chasing through the streets. It's almost like, like Frankenstein, right? The villagers are going after this monster, this crazy unhinged monster, and you get some good laughs. So, I mean, it's funny whenever people are like, I'm the baddest mother trucker on the planet, I'm this extreme person, I listen to Deicide and Mortician and all these metal people that think they're so badass, right? These people that comment on your videos that, call you a poser. I always laugh because it's like, you've got nothing on John Waters and you've got nothing on Divine. Those are people who are so comfortable with who they are and they love to express and push boundaries as artists. That to me is true badass extremism. That is something that, what? Oh, wow, you're a metal band that, plays on stage with spikes, but can you come up with a film where you have a giant lobster crushing through a, door and sexually assaulting somebody on a couch? No, you can't. That to me just is why Multiple Maniacs, I'm sorry, I gave it away because you'll see it anyway. And the thing is, I'm saying this, and I bet a lot of people are like, that doesn't happen. No way. No one would do that. John Waters did. But see, I could tell you this, and you still won't believe me. So I feel like I'm not spoiling it, because when you see it, it's a whole different feeling, trust me. After I watch Multiple Maniacs, and that's the thing, I hate at movie theaters when people clap, because it's like, dude, stop clapping at a freaking movie theater. They can't hear you, and you're annoying me. But I was watching this film, right? I'm not in a movie theater. I look around, I say, you know what? Gotta give it to John Waters. I watched this film thinking it's going to be wacky and crazy. And sure it was, but it was enjoyable. So, gotta recommend, if you are a person who enjoys this type of stuff that's shocking, outrageous. I mean, if you're that type, okay. Multiple Maniacs, I would love to see that girl that eats butter and is like really religious and talks about video games, I guess. Someone told me about her. I would love to see her like watch Multiple Maniacs, because she would probably like have an aneurysm and just explode and complain about how it's perversion and Jesus. Get over yourself, man. It's art, and I got to give credit. So check it out, everybody. Multiple Maniacs. All right. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you are interested to learn any more about the films I've talked about, leave a comment below. And actually, you know what? Tell me some films that you feel are underrated, that are films that you feel don't get a lot of attention or people think are just too extreme and crazy to, recommend in public. But you know what? Who cares? Enjoy what you enjoy. Be proud of who you are and what you like. So, yeah, leave those comments below. I'm interested to hear some movies, because I'm always looking to find new stuff I haven't checked out. So, hey, thank you very much for watching this video. Rob the Mel Guy, signing off. Later.